You found it. Your home for the best content on your favorite team, the Fighting Tigers of LSU. Do us a favor. Subscribe to the channel. Leave your comments below. And be sure to smash that like button. Busy recruiting weekend for LSU football. Shea Dixon on 3, the Bengal Tiger, good enough to join us as he does here on Tuesday. Shady, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you, Matt?
I'm doing really well. Let me just start with, I think, the recap everybody wants to hear. Dakorien Moore, the 5-star number 1 receiver in the country, was on campus this past weekend. Shea, I don't know, I say this often, I don't know that I've ever seen a guy having a bad official visit, right, when they're rolling out the red carpet and whining and dining you, so to speak. It looked like Dakorien Moore and his family had a great time. What can you tell us?
Yes, nobody. You're getting so good at this, Matt, with recruiting. Nobody.
I know.
When they pay to fly you in and put you up for the weekend and you get wined and dined ever has a bad time. And if they do, that's just not the kind of guy you want in your program, I wouldn't think. Someone who can't have fun on that weekend. But yes, the number 1 receiver in the country, and for good reason, out of Duncanville. And one-time LSU commitment, Dakorien Moore was the only official visitor this past weekend. I think that speaks to kind of the amount of effort and attention they wanted to put onto him by sandwiching that visit. In between 2 weeks ago, they had double-digit official visitors. This weekend, they'll have double-digit official visitors, but only more this past weekend. So he and his family came in. We talked to him. We talked to his mom, and they definitely blew it away. Now, is he going to end up back in LSU's class? I think it's too early to say that. He's got an official coming up to Oregon and Texas. Those are the last 2 that he'll take. He'll make this month. We'll see if he does any in the fall or when he potentially plans to get back on board with the team. But Ohio State, LSU were the teams that knocked out the past 2 visits, and now coming up with the Ducks and Longhorns. Most people, Matt, think or feel like, okay, this is a kid who may just stay home and play for Texas and be close to his mom and them in Austin. But I do think that the work done by this staff, top to bottom, boy, they had all hands on deck, is what Dakorien said, and ended, Moore said, in nearly 3-hour meeting with his family and Frank Wilson, talking over the program, their future, all of that. So obviously putting kind of an ace on him. And Frank, who's been in many of these recruitments, is a solid move for LSU. And look, we'll see where it goes. They've got Teron Francis committed, who's the highest-ranked receiver in Louisiana. He's coming out of Edna Carr. And then they had Moore, and Moore backs off it. But at the same time, they've been recruiting kind of the who's who of receivers in this class. I'd say now, after this month, when it ends, of the top 10 receivers, half of them, if not more than half, I'll have to look, will have made official visits this month to LSU. So not just Moore. They're in it for a number of guys at the position.
I want to get to this weekend's visitor list in just a second, Shea. But, you know, one of the things I hear often is, and again, this is probably just a fan perspective, to say, well, if it's with Dakorien Moore, Texas will roll out whatever NIL amount he wants and they'll get him. I mean, is that a fair way to approach it?
I don't think so. I think that as he sits in meetings with all these coaches and hears more, you start to truly think about, and look, I was at the On3 Elite Series when Dakorien Moore was there, and so were all these other guys that are highly ranked at receiver. Bryce Underwood was there, Harlan Berry, LSU's commitments, and they talked and got to hear from NFL guys. They got to hear from Midwinter, one of the big NIL agents out there, and someone who's been kind of on top of covering it and informing people of, look, don't go chasing the bag, as maybe the kids might say, and really take time to say, hey, where am I? Where's a fit for me? Where am I going to be developed? And we saw Dakorien Moore Bryce Underwood talk about just that after the On3 Elite Series, when he said, money is basically the last thing. I'll quote him. He said, money's going to be the last thing I'm thinking about until I get to the league. Keep the main thing. And in terms of committing to LSU, Underwood said, I'm going there because I saw what Jaden Daniels was when he got there from Arizona State and what he was when he left and became the number 2 pick in the draft. And long term, I think these guys, certainly who are very educated, and by the end of all these visits, Dakorien Moore will fit into that boat and have the, hey, look, here's what your lifespan in the NFL is. Here's what average NIL earnings are right now for college guys as we move towards this potential revenue model, and here's what you could potentially earn in the NFL. Then for LSU, they're going to stack up for a guy like Moore things like it was between Roy Williams to Xavier Worthy. I'd have to look in Google when Roy Williams got drafted.
Oh, man.
But that was the gap between first-round receivers for a school like Texas. That was 2004. So 20 years, Texas had a gap between having first-round receivers. LSU's been putting at least one or two out, it seems, every single year. So I do think that even guys who maybe an onlooker would say, oh, he's just after NIL, they're also going to sit down and really look at the numbers and say, okay, which schools have been developing guys, and perhaps that changes under Sark. They had Xavier Worthy drafted, they'll have some guys drafted, but overall, no matter who's been the coach, LSU has churned out elite receivers, and I think that's why they have all these guys' attention, including Moore.
Shay, you don't remember the Texas LSU Cotton Bowl on New Year's Day 2003 when they had to put Michael Clayton at safety to try to guard Roy Williams?
It made me think of it. That was that was right before I got to LSU. So, yeah, 21 years ago. A long time ago, Matt. Your memory's better than mine.
I got sunburned in the Cotton Bowl that day for an 11 a.m. kickoff when you wouldn't think on New Year's Day sun would be an issue, but I'll be damned, it really was that day. A guy who was not playing in that game but didn't miss it by much is Chuck Wiley. His son, C.J. Wiley, speaking of receivers, he's one of the official visitors that'll be on campus this weekend. What can you tell us about that recruitment, Shay?
Yeah, he's coming out of Georgia in Milton High, and we've got him ranked at On3 as the number 6 receiver in the country. So if you talk about Dakorien Moore being number 1, we've got Khalid Glock at number 2. He's already visited. Jamie French is a On3 industry top 5 receiver. He's already visited officially this month, and now they've got Wiley coming in. Like I said, number 6 receiver in the country. We've got him as a top 50 prospect. He's right in that 6'4", 210-pound range, and I don't think he'll ever grow into like a jumbo wide receiver tight end maybe, but he's got size compared to what your normal rising senior in high school is. And no shock when your dad's Chuck Wiley and played on the D-line at that level that you've got some size to you, but he's a receiver, and boy, he's tough to bring down and has everybody fighting over him. But I talked to Chad Simmons this morning, one of our national analysts, and he's in Georgia, and he said, look, the buzz around here is that this is going to come down to a battle between Kirby Smart and LSU. And I don't think that they've tried to lean too heavily on, hey, look, you're a legacy and, come here because your dad did. And they've got a couple of kids in this class who are legacies, including a couple of current commitments. J.D. LaFleur, John David LaFleur's son, and, J.D. LaFleur and Bordelon, two sons of former players, at tight end and O-line. So can they add another here at receiver on offense? We'll see. But, yes, they're kind of making it about, hey, look, carve your own path, come here and be a receiver. Your dad was saying this as a defensive lineman. You can come here and not necessarily just be following in his path, but still kind of create your own niche at LSU. And this weekend they'll have him and Pops and everybody else on campus. So they've had him on campus a number of times, but an official visit is obviously very different because you're spending the whole weekend there and really get a lot of one-on-one time with the staff. So I'm interested to see how this one goes because I think as we look at all these receivers, he's one that you point to that's visited multiple times, that's got connections to LSU. The only hurdle, which is a big one, is he's in Georgia and Kirby and them want him. So can you get into Georgia and take a guy? LSU's done it before. I think that, as Chad Simmons noted to me, that this weekend's visit, he feels will kind of tell us a lot about whether CJ ends up at LSU or not.
Shea Dixon on 3, the Bengal Tiger. He's on Twitter at Shea Dixon. Shea, any other notable names that'll be on campus this weekend?
Yeah, like I said, they've got a double-digit visitor list. The highest ranked would be a guy named Jonah Williams, who's coming out of Galveston, and he's ranked as a 5-star, but he's also ranked as the number 1 safety, and what in the country, I should say. What makes this really intriguing, though, and I talked to him at the On3 Elite Series for a bit about it, is he's also a high-level baseball player, and these guys come around to every, look, Chad Jones is a 5-star number 1 safety coming out of Southern Lab and was a very good baseball player. Williams is good enough to where he's being recruited by A&M, Oregon, schools that are very good at baseball and football. So as things sort of take shape, he's coming off of that A&M visit, then LSU. Early on, people, Matt, thought he would go to Oklahoma. That doesn't seem to be the feel anymore. But he will be at Oregon after this, and Ohio State's kind of been in the mix. I still think as a Galveston kid who's really into baseball and football, that this one probably comes down to LSU and A&M. So this weekend, not only will football be kind of pouring all their efforts into Jonah Williams, but Jay Johnson and the baseball staff will obviously be recruiting him as well. So this happens, I feel like, once every 2 cycles for LSU, where they get into it with, a guy who's a very highly ranked football recruit, a 5-star and the number 11 overall player in the country, regardless of what position he plays, but is also very good at baseball. And we've seen guys pull off playing both before. I think kind of when you balance football and another sport, kind of the easiest ones to do, easy is relative here, but would be track and baseball because the seasons are so different. So I am curious to see how this one plays out. I think LSU quietly is in this one more than people realize thanks to the baseball program.
Shea, before we let you get out of here, we've talked so much, obviously, about Bryce Underwood, and there's so much excitement. But this also feels like the time where we should start to hear names about who LSU's targeting for 2026, after Bryce Underwood. What kind of direction is Joe Sloan going there right now?
Yeah, I think one thing we haven't talked a lot about is the benefit or the impact, and this probably counts for a number of things, continuity with the current team, all that. But Joe Sloan going from quarterback coach to OC. Because not only was all these quarterbacks out here familiar with him as the quarterbacks coach, but when you make him the OC, that makes kind of that pitch even stronger, and that sets them up pretty well for 2026. Today, they had Brady Hart, who's a top 10 quarterback coming out of Florida, on campus for a visit. But then tomorrow, Dia Bell, the number 2 quarterback in the country, gets to campus. He'll be here for a couple days. Then when he leaves, the weekend arrives, and Faison Brandon, the number 1 quarterback in the country, will be on campus. So even with Bryce Underwood, who is not just the number 1 quarterback, Matt, the number 1 overall player, Joe Sloan is still able to get these big names on campus. Now, who's going to be that guy who commits to the class after, a guy like Bryce Underwood? We'll see. But it's good news to at least get all of, I think at this point I'm looking at it, 6 of the top 10 quarterbacks by the end of this week will have visited at some point this off season, and that whole time Bryce Underwood's been committed already, so they know that. I think that's a pretty big deal and speaks to kind of where we're at. I think as LSU media or fans, we have to take a step back sometimes and realize, oh wait, these new wave of kids see LSU as like the number 1 offense in college football, and all they do is throw it and turn out Heisman winners at quarterback. It's a little bit tougher for us to remove ourselves and realize, oh, wait, that is the mindset of guys who are, 16, 17, 18 years old right now.
First-round picks at receiver, offensive rookie of the year. Yeah, Heisman-winning quarterbacks. It's a new day for certain. Shea, you're the best. On3, the Bengal Tiger. He's on Twitter at Shea Dixon. Thanks, man.
Thanks, Matt. We'll talk again next week.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.